Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my library tour for 2025 for my little book room, the little space that I've created for myself with a little bed and a little dog and a little nightstand and a green shaded lamp. This is uh, my place where I can come and close the door on the world, on the world that is not dogs, because my version of this little book room has existed for a long time, and it is always filled with dogs. It's only very, very rarely, actually only 3 times now, this is the 3rd time, where there's only been one dog. Otherwise, in this little space, and often the space has been smaller, I had to fit a baseball team of dogs, and I was happy to do it. And we are going through the books, uh, one Joe shelf at a time. So we're going to do the Crosswise books first. There are quite a few this time. The books that you stick on top, as you see, and your books shelves look the same, I'm sure. And then we'll do the normal books on the next shelf here. So let's deal with the Crosswise books. We have Andrew Pettigrew, which we've already seen him. He was a co-author of a book, A History of the Library. Yeah, this thing. Of which I have 2 copies. There should not be 2 copies of this in this room, and I will have to deal with that, because although there are 10 copies of War and Peace, there can't be 2 copies of a book that I don't love as much as War and Peace. Eventually, I am going to be rationing space in this room. I'm not at the moment, but eventually I will be. So this is Andrew Pettigrew writing alone, and this is his book, The Book in the Renaissance. A study of what it was like to make and own and annotate and trade and sell books in the Italian Renaissance. Then we have this trade paperback from the 1990s. Is that right? 1990. This is from the University of Toronto Press. This is the Erasmus Reader, which is basically an Erasmus anthology, but with all of the newer University of Toronto translations. The University of Toronto is really the hotbed for studies of Erasmus in English. Always has been for the last 50 years. So when I saw this anthology was coming out, I knew that I wanted it, even though I knew that I had a lot of these works in whole or in part in other anthologies. Then we have David McCord's little book about Boston. This just takes you through the various areas of the greatest city in the world, and tells you a little bit about their history and their folklore and whatnot. It was meant as a guidebook back when there were no paperbacks, but it serves really well as a snapshot of the Boston of its time. I have a number of Boston guidebooks that do that, and that's why I have them. Not because they're relevant anymore, but because, I mean, this thing came out when? 1950s? 1948. So, in the time between this book and now, an entire massive multi-million-dollar highway construction project has happened in Boston, been in Boston, and then a multi-million-dollar project to reverse that project, to tear that down. All of that has happened in Boston in the time since this book, plus plenty of other things. So I don't get these old guidebooks to be current with events. I get them as a snapshot of the Boston of their day. Okay, then we have a romance novel. This is Alyssa Clark, Marry Me If You Dare. This is a Paul Marin cover. I think that's probably why I got it. This looks like it's self-published. It's the part of the Waiters and Wallflowers series, but it looks like this is self-published. So Paul Marin on a self-published book. Maybe that's why I grabbed it. And then the last Transwise book here is a horror tube anthology. This is from Booktubers, and this is Served Cold, an anthology of cold and winter-related stories in which I occur. There is our table of contents, and as you can see right down there, the cold traps is me. I set a horror story on the moon, on Earth's moon. Specifically the bottoms of the deepest craters of the dark side of the Earth's moon, which are unbelievably cold, some of the coldest places in the solar system. And I wrote the story, of course, in one sitting. All good short stories are written in one sitting, and it's in this anthology. And it was only latterly that I realized uh, two things. One, that this is only my second uh, short story to appear under my own name in forever, in decades. And the second thing is that the last short story to appear under my own name was also about the moon. I am a little bit obsessed with Earth's moon, but that's kind of weird. A long time ago, 10, 15 years ago, I wrote a short story for The Lifted Brow, a literary magazine in Australia. And it was about the moon. It was about a drug addict who is in love with the moon. He doesn't love it aesthetically. He doesn't love it poetically. He's actually in love with the moon. And in the course of the story, either he's having a drug-induced hallucination or the moon is starting to reciprocate. And that issue of The Lifted Brow, I don't remember what number it is, but that is now intensely collectible. Because I share the table of contents with a whole bunch of other people whose names you will know. That issue of The Lifted Brow is hard to find. I have a copy of it somewhere. A complimentary. I didn't get paid, so I got a complimentary copy, and it's somewhere in this room. But I've heard stories about how you have to go and pay money for it online. So those are the Crosswise books, and now we will deal with the books on the shelf. So we have this old thing. This is, oh God, how old is this? I'm going to say 1910. Oh, no, I'm wrong. No, this is, no, the latest printing of this was 1906. This is Hiawatha, The Song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. With illustrations by Harrison Fisher, and you can really tell they are really period piece illustrations, but they are wonderful. The illustrations here are wonderful all throughout. This is Longfellow's one of his most famous poems. The Indian maidens all throughout here are very close to Gibson girls. They come very close to that. I love Longfellow. I love The Song of Hiawatha. And there are innumerable versions of this poem. And also, I think the whole of this is in the Penguin Classic Selected Longfellow. I think all of Hiawatha is in there. I might be wrong about that. But I wanted a nice, pretty illustrated older edition for when I go back to it. Okay, this next one is a hardcover. I have the trade paperback in here too. This is Richard Kluger, and this is his book, The Sheriff of Nottingham. This is historical fiction, but it is incredible. It is incredibly good. And as you can tell from the title, it is set in the world of Robin Hood. If you know the title of The Sheriff of Nottingham, you almost certainly know it from the Robin Hood stories, where Robin Hood is a charismatic bandit who steals from the rich and gives to the poor, and his enemies are loutish King John and the Sheriff of Nottingham. Those are his enemies because the forces of right, King Richard, is not in the kingdom, so evil is able to flourish. And this is a very different Sheriff of Nottingham. This is far more historically grounded. Robin Hood is barely mentioned in this book, but King John is all over this, and wonderfully done. This is just wonderful. Not the kind of historical fiction that you soon forget. There are scenes in here that you will never forget. I have the trade paperback, which doesn't look anything like this. They didn't use this cover again, but I go back to this, and the hardcover is more durable, so I have the hardcover as well. Okay, all right. Well, I don't remember if it was yesterday. In an earlier video, I mentioned that there are biographies that I love so much. I love them far beyond biographies, autobiographies, letter collections, pieces of nonfiction and also history that I love far beyond their normal genre restrictions, and that ought to be in here. Some of those ought to be in here in this little book room, which is where the books I love the most are. And I've always resisted doing that because that would end me up having biographies in two places, histories in two places. A number of you responded to that, saying, "Oh, to hell with that! Bring your favorite books into this room, no matter what they are." That's really interesting. That might be the nudge I need to do it. But these two books were always going to be in here. They are memoir. Typically, I do not like the memoir genre. If you're going to sit down and write your memoirs, you should be fearless. They should be the document that speaks all that was on your mind when it wasn't in your best interest to speak that stuff yourself. If you write a careful memoir, you've written a useless book. And so you'd think the last thing that would be in here would be memoirs, but this is a 2-volume memoir by Anthony Burgess. This is Big Wilson, Little God, and You've Had Your Time. These are the 2 volumes of his memoir, and they are amazing. Oh my God, they are amazing. I am a huge, huge fan of Anthony Burgess anyway, but I think these 2 volumes are probably my favorite thing that he ever wrote. They are exactly the kind of the obnoxious word that we would use in the 21st century would be maximalist, but they're exactly the kind of overstuffed, completely I don't care, honest memoir that I would like to write. I would like my own memoir to be like that, and also that I wish everybody else would write. And also sustainedly great reading. So, of course, they had to be in here. It actually gives a lie to my worry about mixing genres, because I never doubted that these things would be in here. Then we have Leonard Woolf's book, The Essential Dracula. I have a couple of copies of this in here. This is a heavily annotated version of Dracula. There are footnotes all throughout this thing. It is the whole text of Dracula, but it has a long introduction and a ton of quibbling footnotes that you quickly realize are being done at least as much for fun as anything else. Leonard Woolf had a ball writing this book, I think. And it shows, because the annotated journey that you take through this story is wonderful. Just wonderful. That's why I have a couple of copies. Andrew Wolfe did the annotated Jekyll and Hyde. He did the annotated Frankenstein. And those are really good too, but nothing beats his annotated Dracula. Okay, then we have, this is Matthias Bostrom. This is his book From Holmes to Sherlock. This is the paperback. Yeah, the paperback has my blurb on it. But I also have the advanced reader's copy of this. I have 2 paperbacks. I have the finished copy. I love this book. Just love it. And it is the story of the life and afterlife of the character of Sherlock Holmes. So how he appeared and how he first gained traction as a fan favorite in the Strand magazine. And then the thing I think that guaranteed this character's immortality, at least for another century, was his jump to other media. To the stage, and then the screen, and then the little screen. And Bostrom is so good at writing about every one of those iterations. He's so good at writing about every Sherlock Holmes you have ever seen rather than read, that it's just a spellbinding book. It's a must for all Sherlock Holmes fans. That you just got to read this book. You're going to love it. How I wish that a book like this were written with this kind of talent about a few other things. I'd really like a book like this about Tarzan, for instance. But what an experience. What a trip. Let's see here. What's next? Oh, okay. This is Stephen Pressfield, Gates of Fire. This is his historical novel about the Battle of Thermopylae that will be known to you from the 300, Zack Snyder's The 300. This is just terrific. It's a straightforward historical novel. Pressfield's really good at it, really, really good at it. But it is still straightforward. It's not like The Sheriff of Nottingham, for instance. I'm not describing how, but it is not like The Sheriff of Nottingham. And it's one of the few, just a couple of straightforward historical novels that are in this room. That I'm not really clear on why, on what would do that. I mean, I really like Gates of Fire, but what's it doing in this room? Maybe I need to rethink this room. When I'm adding or swapping out bookcases, maybe I need to do that. Like, for instance, that bookcase right there is good enough. That was free. I got that off the sidewalk. But if it were taller, it would be even better. And it can't be taller. What are the chances that I'll find a bookcase that'll fit perfectly right on top there? Very slim. But what are the chances I would find a bookcase or 2 bookcases that are the same, that can be taller and just replace that one? Those are pretty good. If I have a car and a pair of shoulders, then that could be done. Oh, okay. We have David Hatcher Childress. This is his book, The Bigfoot Files. This is all about Sasquatch sightings in the Americas and firsthand accounts, trackways, that sort of thing. I'm sure that this is Adventures Unlimited Press. I'm sure that they went with what they could get for a cover for a cover to this thing. I might point out what you cryptozoologists are already pointing out, which is there are almost no recounts of Sasquatch using tools, breaking things, pounding trees, throwing rocks, but not using clubs. Why, if you're 10 feet tall, why would you need to use a club? but I have a discrete number of Bigfoot books. I actually wish I had more. There are 2 Bigfoot books out there that I've never found in the wild that I would like to have. I've read them, of course. I've read everything, but I don't have a copy. I don't have a copy, for instance, of Jeff Meldrum's book. Dr. Meldrum wrote a book called Bigfoot or Sasquatch When Myth Meets Science, that had a healthy print run. I mean, and yet I've never seen a copy of it, so I don't have that. I've read it, but I'd like to have it so I can have a Bigfoot section in my library. Oh, all right. Well, here you go. Here's a letter collection. So obviously I don't have as much of a problem with this as I once thought. This is great. This was put together by Leonard Marcus. This is called Dear Genius. And it is the letters of Ursula Nordstrom, who forever and ever was a children's editor. She was a children's editor at, was it Random House? Harper's Department of Books for Boys and Girls. She was the editor of the Harper's Department of Books for Boys and Girls for 30 years. And shaped the industry. A lot of the classic children's books that you know and love, maybe that you grew up with, were commissioned and midwifed by her. They were shepherded along by her when their authors were having their 19th nervous breakdown, and she was the thing keeping them grounded and also writing. And her letters are wonderful. This is just an incredible volume. And it's a letter collection, but it's right here in this room. Same with Randall Jarrell. So I think clearly what I need to do is just go through this room and be ruthless. Pull out the doubles of stuff that don't need to have doubles in here. Pull out the stuff that's just momentum, that was just put in here when the room was set up. And make some space, some more space. There's already space in this room. Make some more space. And pull in some of the biographies and letter collections that I love the most that aren't in here. I think maybe that's probably what I should do. That I shouldn't let genre distinctions determine what goes in this room. Okay, well, this next one you saw coming. This is Meg by Steve Alden. This is the original hardcover, a novel of deep terror, and they got a pre-blurb to beat all pre-blurbs, and so they made that the whole back cover. 2 words: Jurassic Shark. And this is, of course, the story of a megalodon, a 50-foot-long, phosphorescent, gigantic, prehistoric killer shark. Phosphorescent because for all these millennia it has been living down deep in the trenches of Earth's oceans, far away from the sunlight. So it has de-evolved its skin pigment. Steve Alden, I don't think, is saying that megalodons were albino. Of course, he's not saying that. But the one in this book is, and it finds its way to the surface and starts to chow down. This book came out in when did this come? We've already seen a paperback of this. This came out in 1997, and I have been head over heels in love with it ever since. All right, then we have another novel. This is God Knows by Joseph Heller. Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22. But this is his historical / quasi-historical novel about King David from the Bible. And it's wonderful. I believe is his heartfelt life masterpiece. Catch-22, it's a carefully constructed thing, but it's always struck me as being glib. I've never liked it in Joe Heller's life work. I've never liked it as much as a lot of other stuff. For instance, I think that Catch-22 is much worse of a novel, far less insightful, even far less well written than Good as Gold or Something Happened. And this book is towering in a way that nothing else this author wrote is. So I just love it. I've done read-alongs of it on this channel. And then finally, the last book here is another example of how a relatively new book can make it into this room. Sometimes immediately, and sometimes more or less immediately. Usually when I read a new book, if it's a book that belongs in this room, I'll know it right away. And that was definitely true with this. This is Catherine Raven's book, Fox and I. Her memoir of meeting and getting to know a wild fox on her property. She can't stand people, but this fox keeps visiting her country property, and they start to know each other. They start to get to know each other, and it's a very familiar premise, of course. There are probably a dozen books in this room that have a premise like that, but it works so well. Oh, my. And this was the pandemic. Yeah. I must be remembering that right, because 2021. Yeah, I was reading the galley of this while I was waiting to be vaccinated. In a gigantic military-run installation. And even then, even right at the beginning, I knew how much I loved this. How much... and I reviewed this for the Christian Science Monitor. I've never seen the paperback of this, so I don't know who's blurbed on it or what, but I loved it. I just loved it. I can't recommend it strongly enough. So there you go. And those books, that kind of book, of course, is perennial. They're a favorite with readers. There's one out, or coming out right soon, called Raising Hare. Same kind of book, where an author quasi-adopts, or at least comes to know, an animal that is never actually domesticated. And it leads to reflections on the author's own life, but also on extremely close observations of a non-human animal. And Raising Hare is also great. It might very well end up in this room. So there you go. That is the next shelf. We're getting down towards the ground. But the next shelf, I don't know. I'd be dipping out of camera range. I might have to sit down for the next shelf. But that's this one. I'm going to put these Crosswise books back where they were. So I'll wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.